Have you ever wondered why some apps feel like they're literally reading your mind, while others make you want to launch your phone across the room? Well, you're in the right place. In this explainer, we are going to completely demystify the invisible psychology and precise engineering that goes into the apps and websites we use every single day. We're uncovering the hidden matrix of user interface design.
Here's exactly how we're going to break this down. First, we'll define what UI actually is, then we'll walk through the 4 steps of design. After that, we'll dig into the 3 golden rules: putting users first, reducing memory load, and maintaining absolute consistency. And finally, I'll give you the ultimate design cheat sheet.
All right, let's kick things off with Section 1. What exactly is UI design?
You know, UI is way more than just picking a cool color palette or slapping some buttons on a website. A user interface is the bridge, the actual front-end view where you interact with a piece of software. It's the literal connection between human intention and computer action. Now, sure, most of us immediately think of a graphical user interface, or GUI, like tapping an icon on a touchscreen or clicking a mouse. But UI is also talking to that smart speaker in your kitchen. That's a voice-controlled interface. Or if you're a developer typing raw lines of code, you're using a command line interface, a CLI. The whole shebang has one singular goal: making it absolutely seamless for you to tell a computer what to do.
So, moving on to Section 2. How do we actually build this stuff? Let's look at the 4 steps of design. Because let me tell you, killer design does not happen by accident. It is an engineered 4-step assembly line. First up, we've got planning. This is where designers do their homework, figure out what users actually need, and set the overall vibe and navigation. Step 2 is prototyping and sketching. Just like it sounds, you're mocking things up in awesome tools like Figma or Canva. Then comes optimization. This is where teams go in, ruthlessly analyze the prototype, and iron out all the kinks. Finally, step 4 is implementation, where the design is actually built based on all that brutal, honest feedback.
But wait, that brings up the million-dollar question, right? You built the slick prototype, but how do you know if it's actually any good? Just because it looks gorgeous doesn't mean it works for a real, living, breathing human being.
And that leads us perfectly into Section 3, and the core of this explainer: the 3 golden rules of UI design. Let's tackle rule number 1, put users first.
To really place users in control, an interface has to hit some specific marks. It can't lock you into one rigid mode of operation. It needs to be flexible, interruptible, and super easy to navigate. But the key word I want you to focus on here is forgiving. Legendary UI expert Ben Shneiderman makes this a massive priority. He says an interface absolutely must permit the easy reversal of actions. Seriously, think about the sheer panic you'd feel if there was no undo button when you accidentally deleted a whole paragraph of text. A forgiving UI totally crushes that user anxiety, because you know, hey, if I mess up, I can easily bounce back. Another absolute legend in this space, Don Norman, looks at user control through a fascinating lens he calls affordance. Basically, an interface element should visually scream exactly how you're supposed to use it. If a digital button has a tiny shadow and looks raised, it affords pushing. If a slider has a little track, it affords dragging. When what you think it does matches what it actually does, you are firmly in the driver's seat. It's kind of like avoiding those humiliating doors that have pull handles but are actually meant to be pushed. We want zero guesswork.
But here's a massive trap. You could design a super customizable app that gives the user total control. But can they actually remember how to do it all? If someone needs to memorize a giant manual just to use your app, you've completely failed the next major pillar.
Which brings us to Section 4. Rule number 2, reduce memory load.
To take the pressure off your brain, designers use something called progressive disclosure, meaning they don't dump everything on you at once. Shneiderman points out a huge psychological quirk here. We should always design for recognition, not recall. Why? Because human short-term memory is shockingly limited. Generally speaking, our brains can only juggle about 7, give or take 2, chunks of info at a time. Asking a user to pull a specific text command out of thin air is a massive cognitive burden. But picking an option from a visual menu they recognize, that's totally effortless. To cut down that mental strain even more, designers lean heavily on real-world metaphors. Just think about your computer's desktop right now. You've got folders and a trash can. You already know how a physical folder works in a filing cabinet, so your brain instantly gets the digital version without having to learn a completely new set of weird rules. Don Norman adds to this memory-saving trick with 2 very cool concepts: signifiers and mapping. So while affordance tells you what an object can do, signifiers are the visual clues that scream where the action happens. Mapping, on the other hand,
is the relationship between a control and its actual effect on the system. Think about it like a steering wheel. You turn it right, the digital car goes right. Flawless mapping means you never have to memorize what a button does. The visual relationship makes it incredibly obvious.
All right, so we've got users in control, their brains aren't hurting from memory overload, but what happens when an app keeps growing and adding a million new features over time? How do we stop the whole thing from turning into a chaotic, confusing mess? That exact problem leads us to Section 5. Rule number 3. Maintain absolute consistency.
To keep things from devolving into total visual chaos, you have to be wildly consistent. The golden rule here is that similar situations must have similar designs and behaviors. If your submit button is a friendly green oval on the checkout page, it definitely shouldn't magically morph into a blue square on the contact page. We're talking identical terminology in menus, consistent colors, matching layouts, uniform capitalization, you name it. This creates continuity. It makes the user feel totally safe and at home, no matter how deep they dig into the app.
And Shneiderman takes this consistency idea a step further with a really brilliant principle: design dialogue to yield closure. Basically, consistency and feedback is everything. When you finish a task, the system needs to give you a clear, consistent high five, like a super satisfying checkmark or a clear success pop-up. Psychologically, this gives users a huge sense of relief, letting them know they nailed the task and can safely move on.
When you strictly follow these consistency rules, you achieve what Shneiderman calls universal usability and what Norman calls discoverability. This means literally anyone, regardless of their age, culture, or tech savviness, can navigate the system without hitting a wall. The interface feels completely intuitive because it simply never breaks its own established rules.
Okay, let's tie all of this together in Section 6, the ultimate design cheat sheet.
We've covered a lot of psychology and engineering today, but to lock this in, you really just need to remember two simple acronyms. First up, PPOI for your chronological design steps: planning, prototyping, optimization, and implementation. Next is CMC, which covers your overarching 3 golden rules: place users in control, reduce their memory load, and maintain strict consistency. And for the real design nerds out there, here are the deep dive checklists from our 2 experts, mapped out into full acronyms. For Shneiderman's 8 rules, think CUFCERCM. And for Norman's 7 principles, it's DFCASMC. It's pretty amazing how these dense, psychological design principles can be so neatly packed into something digestible.
So now that you've peeked behind the curtain and can see the invisible matrix of UI design, you are never going to look at software the same way again. Seriously, I challenge you right now. Pull out your phone, open your 3 favorite apps, and put them to the test. Do they rely on recognition over recall? Is the mapping actually obvious? And most importantly, can you figure out exactly why they either delight you effortlessly or drive you absolutely crazy? Thanks for hanging out with me for this explainer, and keep your eyes open to the design hiding in plain sight all around you.